Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this very interesting and very timely webinar that the Indian School of Business is organizing in partnership with the British Deputy High Commission here in Chandigarh. Today, as you all know, is Earth Day, April 22nd. Days like this are used as an occasion for all of us to sometimes repurpose and think about issues that really matter. This year, we decided to partner with the British High Commission to organize a panel discussion on climate change and its impact on agriculture. This is significant for more reasons than one. One, this is the year of COP26. In a few months from now, UK is hosting COP26, and there's a bunch of events and activities that are sort of being organized in the run-up to it for all participating countries to actually think of what should be the agenda and action plan going forward. There is also here with us panelists who represent an important portfolio of agriculture from two states of Punjab and Haryana, states which are predominantly agrarian and therefore have a lot of important contributions to make. We also have with us Dr. Arvind Padi, who is the country director of ICRISAT here, and as someone who spent time in the space, will also share his experiences. While we'll be joined by the fourth panelist, and I will also just make a mention of my colleague, Dr. Anjal Prakash, who is the research director at Bharti Institute, who will moderate the discussion. I do want to welcome Ambassador Ken O'Flaherty, who is the regional director of the UK government for COP26 for Asia Pacific and South Asia. So Ken, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. And I know you've this is a role that you've taken a little over a year ago now, from what I gather. And Ken is a career officer of the Foreign Service and has previously served in Rome, Tokyo, and also has been in part of the representation to EU. So Ken, we look forward to your remarks. I also noticed that George has just joined, so welcome, George. To all my Indian colleagues from the administrative service who are on the call this afternoon, belated greetings and expression of gratitude. Yesterday was Civil Services Day. It's a day that we all sort of use as an occasion to recognize and thank all of you for the services that you render to this country. And I think all of us are in full admiration of the work that you all do. So my sort of respects to all of you on this occasion. And I think with those few words, I do want to sort of now invite Ambassador Ken O'Flaherty to, for your remarks. And after that, we'll just move over to the panel discussion. Over to you, Ken.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be with you today. Happy Earth Day, and to all our panelists and those watching. So I would start by saying we are currently at a critical juncture. Humanity is facing twin threats of climate change and biodiversity loss. The two are inextricably linked, and they do need to be tackled together, urgently, and with equal ambition. In 2015, world leaders committed in Paris to a historic agreement to tackle global climate change. They agreed to keep global mean temperature rises well below 2 degrees Celsius and to strive to limit the rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius. Both India and the UK are proud signatories of that Paris Agreement. Now, as you may already know, the UK is hosting the UN COP26 later this year in Glasgow, when leaders worldwide will come together to take action to tackle climate change. The UK is seeking to use our COP26 presidency to build on the foundations laid at the 2019 UN Climate Action Summit, and we want to be working with governments, with businesses and civic organisations worldwide to raise climate ambition. We must tackle the drivers of climate change and biodiversity loss. We want to mobilise financing to protect and restore critical ecosystems and kickstart a just rural transition towards sustainable land use, which will benefit people, climate and nature. We want to build momentum of efforts to shape policies, innovation and investment for transitions to sustainable agriculture, improving food, water and economic security. Now, agriculture is one of the most vulnerable sectors to the impacts of climate change, as well as the fourth highest greenhouse gas emitting sector globally. Studies have shown that the largest known economic impact of climate change is upon agriculture because of the size and the sensitivity of that sector. Changes in temperature and rainfall, shifting pests and diseases, and increasingly frequent extreme weather events will affect, and indeed are affecting today, food production and security globally. So I'd like to use this platform to talk a bit about how the UK is transforming our agricultural sector to make it climate smart, and how we can strengthen UK-India collaboration to develop the cutting-edge technology we all need to build a green, resilient and prosperous future. So what's the UK doing? We are taking bold action on climate. We have nearly halved emissions over the last 20 years while growing our economy by 75% at the same time. These emissions reductions have largely been delivered by decarbonising our power sector. But to meet our commitment to go to net zero emissions by 2050, we have to transform every sector of our economy, including agriculture. To do this, we're going to need to harness the power of business and innovation. We have taken advice from our independent Committee for Climate Change on how agriculture needs to change in order to be climate smart. That's likely to include greater use of trees on farms, low carbon approaches on how we use fertilizer and raise livestock, encouraging bioenergy crops, reducing food waste and consumption of the most carbon intensive foods. We believe that this will be good for our people and it will be good for the planet. UK farmers, researchers, businesses are all developing and adapting innovative agricultural practices for tackling climate change. For example, scientists in the UK are developing small battery-powered robots that could drastically cut tractor use and thereby diesel use, which is a large source of carbon emissions in farming. Drones are also increasingly being used in the UK to help farmers work out the exact patterns of moisture, weeds and pests. Mapping and analysing each field allows farmers to be targeting nitrogen fertilizer in only those places where it's needed at the right time and thereby cut their emissions. Businesses have shown that a green economy isn't just good for the environment, it's also good for their bottom line. Being green can be profitable. So if I can turn now to UK-India collaboration. Aimed at developing the opportunity for such collaboration, the DIT Agritech team has appointed a University of Birmingham-led consortium of industry experts to deliver a feasibility report for the UK to successfully partner with India to set up a Centre of Excellence in Post-Harvest Management in Haryana. The Centre of Excellence will be an integrated site demonstrating end-to-end UK capabilities in post-harvest management and logistics with energy-efficient, low-carbon and sustainable technologies. The UK is home to world-class agricultural research in areas such as plant and animal breeding, remote sensing, meteorological prediction and the exploitation of data. When coupled with India's large agricultural research system and skilled human power, these have resulted in initiation of several joint collaborative research projects. These projects deal with critical issues of increasing crop productivity, improving livestock health, exploiting genomics for crop improvement, sustainable management of aquaculture systems, effective management of nitrogen use in agriculture, and reducing post-harvest losses in India. Some of these jointly funded projects have also investigated ways to improve the disease-resistant and stress tolerance of staple crops, and they have led to developing crop varieties that are suitable for a changing climate and producing more food with fewer inputs. Because of these joint programs, the UK is now India's largest international partner in biotechnology research. Agriculture could be more resistant to and resilient to climate change impacts through new technology or by diversifying different crops on farms. So I'm excited to see how we can work together on this agenda of creating climate-smart agriculture. The commitment of both our governments means that the UK and India are natural partners in acting on climate. We can be a joint force for good worldwide. We want to work even closer with India to help us mobilise that global action at COP26. That will mean driving action on priority themes like improving adaptation and resilience and harnessing nature and biodiversity. I very much look forward to hearing the views of the experts on this panel today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Flaherty, for those remarks, and also for touching upon the UK-India relationship, which we all, sort of call the hashtag living bridge. It's only unfortunate because of the current pandemic situation in India that the Prime Minister's visit has been called off, but that I'm sure would have added further momentum to our relationship. Notwithstanding the cancellation of the visit, I'm sure engagements like these will further strengthen partnerships in some of these areas, especially in agriculture, as you specifically mentioned. And we have all the relevant leaders from these very important states who are here who can take this forward. And as a school, ISB is happy to participate as well. With those few words, I want to thank you again for your remarks. And Anjal, over to you.
Thanks, Guru, and thanks, Ken, for a nice overview of the situation we are in, and also looking at how UK and India are working together to solve this problem. And let me just cross over and first introduce my panel today. The panel includes very eminent personalities, and I'm very happy to coordinate this today. We start with Sri Aniruddha Tiwari. He is an IS officer, Additional Chief Secretary, Agriculture and Horticulture and Food Processing from Government of Punjab. Welcome, Aniruddha. Next is Sumita Mishra. Sumita is also an IS officer, and she's also Additional Chief Secretary, Agriculture, Farmers Welfare Department, Government of Haryana. Welcome, Sumita, on board. Arvinda Kumar Padi, he's a Director of Country Relations and Business Affairs, ICRISAT, New Delhi. Welcome, Arvinda, on board. We also have Georges Felix, who's Assistant Professor, Department Center for Agroecology, Water and Resilience, Coventry University from UK. So very eminent panel. Let me just start with few data that my engagement with IPCC work that I've been doing, showing a couple of reports which has come out from IPCC. And the most recent one in 2019 is on impact of climate change on land. And the report actually shows how climate change is going to impact the agriculture sector through water resources. These are the most impacting sectors. At the same time, it is also contributing to a changing climate. And that's something that is worrisome. The figure shows that about 23% of the global human greenhouse gas emissions come from agriculture, forestry, and other land uses. And this additionally about 44% of the recent human-driven methane, potent greenhouse gas, come from agriculture. At the same time, the agriculture is is climate dependent, and it is actually susceptible to changing climate. And if you see the condition of India, we see that huge number of population, especially about 60% of people directly dependent on agriculture. So I have, I start with this panel, let me just go over to the format of this panel is that we'll get an opening remark from each of the panelists, followed by participants who will be asking questions. So we'll make it more conversational and trying to reach to a kind of point where we have some agreement on different aspects of climate change impacting on agriculture. So let me start with Georges. Georges, over to you first for your opening remark.
Thank you, Anjal. Thank you, everybody. Very happy to share some experiences with you, some views. I'm a researcher based in the UK, but I am originally from the Caribbean, and I have quite some experience in West Africa and Europe. And briefly, I would like to share some of the views around the impact of climate change on agriculture. These impacts include ecological, economic, social, political aspects, right, that can be exacerbated by the changes of the climate. And some examples are, for example, more frequent storms or cyclones. In the Caribbean, we have more hurricanes, more frequent and more devastating extreme climate events. Also, droughts can be a problem, extended droughts and droughts in seasons where it's supposed to be raining. So this impacts, of course, the water uptake of the crops and the animals. And also other examples can include, increased events of pests So there's an issue of pest management and plant diseases, whether it's more because of more humidity in the air or more dry. Another point I wanted to raise is that, yeah, climate change is often cited as the main problem, but in fact there are other problems that are affecting global issues, including, for example, biogeochemical nutrient imbalances and the biosphere integrity. And by integrity, I mean this equilibrium, this really subtle equilibriums and interactions that occur in natural ecosystems that we have lost in highly intensive and oversimplified farming systems. So this has led to these monocultures, for example. When we shift from a natural forest, we cut down and we bring it down to a single crop, a single species monoculture, can induce the use of more technology, more pesticides, more herbicides, more insecticides in order to control and replace the functions that biology has naturally. So this, of course, the evident erosion of diversity, which is reflected above ground and below ground. So we're losing as well soil biological diversity. And not only that, we're also losing sediments and nutrients. So there's an important effect or consequence on nutrient losses, which can be, there are strategies to control it. Another point is the pollution, which I've already mentioned, and the water management of the system. So we're tapping into deeper groundwater reserves in order to irrigate our crops, and we are depleting this precious resource. And last but not least, in terms, and maybe it's not directly linked to climate change, but has a big impact on farming families and livelihoods, is that the problem of hunger in the world is not necessarily productivity, but rather an issue of distribution. So from the supermarkets, there is plenty of food that is gone to waste, and it's not necessarily a good thing that is happening. So rethinking these distribution systems and making more equitable access to food items is also a very important element. And I will finish with this. Some of the solutions to climate change is also hearing out the people that are farming and reinforcing the farmer innovations that are taking place in our rural and urban areas, and supporting with appropriate policies the claims of farming families. This is crucial because without farmer there is no food. So they are the main important actor, even more important than the technicians. And sometimes we forget this. So this is a call also for humbleness with our peers and our collaborators. Thank you.
Thanks, George. Thanks, George. It's very, very interesting overview, and also giving us a perspective from the global south, which is important. And we see a lot of similarities between India and the information that you shared. Let me just go over to my friend Arbinda Padi, and Arbinda is heading, is the director with ICRISAT, and has been researching on these issues for quite a long time. So Arbinda, over to you for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Anjal. I think I'm audible there. Okay.
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. Thank you, Anjal. And let me at the outset express my sincere thanks to the British Deputy High Commission at Chandigarh and the ISB for choosing a very relevant topic for the discussion. As you told, Anjal, today is the Earth Day, which is dedicated to raise awareness amongst people about various environmental challenges that is faced by the planet. Coincidentally, President Biden has also convened the Leaders Summit on Climate today, and all eyes are on the commitments that could be announced just before the COP26 in November this year. The UN Food System Summit is also happening later this year. So at such a juncture, a discussion on implications of climate change on agriculture is indeed very apt. And I wish to compliment the ISB and the British Deputy High Commission for this. Judges just spoke about various dimensions around climate change and agriculture. And Ambassador O'Flaherty also talked about the broader global policy arena. Let me elaborate how climate change is impacting the agriculture sector in India. Even though the growth story of Indian agriculture since the onset of Green Revolution has been very impressive, we have the additional chief secretaries of this particular department from Haryana and Punjab, the seat of Green Revolution in our country. But the impact of climate change on agriculture could lead to food security problems and may also threaten the livelihoods of millions in India. The frequent occurrences of natural disasters like flood, drought, storms, hails, cyclones, etc. have led to severe hardships and farm distress in the past. There is now scientific consensus that all these increasing weather variabilities and worsening extremes are due to climate change, and which is impacting the agriculture sector more and more adversely. Anjal, then what could be the main implications of climate change on Indian agriculture? Let me try to spell out a few of them. First, the impact on the food production. Research studies have predicted the trend that there could be an agricultural decline with climate change. I can cite few examples. Studies carried out by the Indian Agricultural Research Institute have indicated the possibility of a loss of 4 to 5 million metric tons in wheat production with every rise of 1 degree centigrade temperature. There are copious other examples from various other parts of the country. I'm just citing this particular example. Second, quality of the food grains. The quality of grains in many crops significantly gets affected by temperature and carbon dioxide. I wish to take a few examples. Research has shown that the decline in grain protein content in cereals could partly be related to increased carbon dioxide concentration and temperature. There are also reports of quality of basmati rice, which is very much cultivated in huge tract in Haryana and Punjab. Their quality could be adversely impacted due to temperature increase beyond an optimum level. The third impact could be on the pest and disease incidences. Judges mentioned about this. In any crop, the pest infestation or disease incidences, they are functions of ambient temperature and humidity. So crop pest or the crop disease interactions will therefore change significantly in a changing climate. The commonest example is recent resurgence of many insect pests and the levels of rust, virulence, and other diseases in parts of India. The fourth impact that I see is the effect on cropping systems. Extremes of weather variables adversely affect the cropping systems. It's now an established fact that the monsoon onset is getting delayed in past years than the normal date. I come from Odisha, and I did a study for my master's dissertation on this variabilities, and I found that the occurrence of very heavy rainfall events, increase in mean annual maximum temperature or decrease in mean annual or monthly minimum temperature, they are very common these days. And as all of us know, that they greatly influence the growth pattern and productivity of many crops. Fifth, Anjal, I would just like to touch upon the impact on allied agri sectors. Extreme weather events not only affect the crops, whether it is field crop or plantation, horticultural, but also they adversely impact the animal agriculture, fisheries, and aquaculture, both directly and indirectly. So to sum up, climate change is perhaps the most extreme challenge agriculture in India, and for that matter, the rest of the world is facing today and has to deal with in future. Anjal, I stop here and come back when we discuss further, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Arvind. A very interesting overview, especially from the perspective from ICRISAT, and I know ICRISAT is one of the leading research scientific research institution, which has been working a lot tirelessly on these issues. We'll come back to you because I would have some questions, and I'm sure participants will also have questions. Let me just go over to Sumita. Sumita, let's just hear from how are things on ground, especially from the states like Haryana. So over to you, Sumita.
Good afternoon, everyone. Greetings on Earth Day. And the Earth Day is Restore Our Earth, which hints that our strategies for conservation have to go beyond mitigation and adaptation and be perhaps much larger in terms of restoration of natural resource systems. With that, I'll come straight away to Haryana. Haryana is one of the most vibrant agrarian economies in the country. And within Haryana, agriculture contributes 9% to our state GDP. It's also one of the most intensive agricultural systems. We have 98% of the cultivable area that is actually cultivated. And the cropping intensity is a whopping 193%. So, and we also have about 85% of our cropped area, which is irrigated mainly by tube well irrigation and some by canal irrigation. Now, and our farming community is made up largely of small and marginal farmers. They constitute about 67% of our total farmers in the state, which is about 16 lakhs. So when we, and as you know, the nurseries of the Green Revolution, of the front rankers or big performers as far as the Green Revolution is concerned. But it is time to wonder or to examine whether we have reached the stage of diminishing returns as far as the Green Revolution itself is concerned. And if I, to elaborate a little on Haryana, our own studies show that Haryana would be looking at about, if we look at the short term, that is up to the 20, we're looking at about 5 degrees Celsius increase in average mean temperatures. And as Arvind said, 1 degree rise means a loss of production of 4 to 5 million tons. So the of wheat. So the effect, one of the things that we are examining is that the effect in the short run is more likely to be manifest in the rabi crops, which we are already seeing for the last some years with the shortening, with the shortened ripening time for wheat, and the fact that that itself leads to multiple problems as far as the rabi crops are concerned. In the medium term, our projections show that the rise would be between 2 to 4 degrees Celsius, and that goes up to 5 to 6 in the longer term beyond that. So, the fact is that the time to strategize and to implement these new multidimensional strategies is not just today. I think it should have been yesterday if we look at the impact climate. Remember, I mean, I would say this not just for Haryana, but for India, or rather the global South, is that, I mean, as per all studies, FAO, WFP, any study, that the greatest impact of climate anomalies is experienced by those that are the poorest, because they are heavily dependent on weather systems, because they have access to less resources and far less capacity or technology to respond. And if you sort of break down that further, the impact of climate change would then be experienced disproportionately by the poor, by small farmers, and by women. So I think these are also very important aspects that the community, whatever global agreements exist, and has in fact trying to exceed. This is something that the global community also needs to look at very seriously, because the global South, which is going to bear the greatest brunt of climate change, has about 75% of the population, and about 67 to 70% of that population is engaged in agriculture. And as the most recent FAO report says, that there are more than 20 countries that are looking at that are going to be hunger hotspots in the very near. That is, I think, something that I wanted to flag as far as the global community and arena is concerned. But back to Haryana, we too have seen some of the impacts of this rice wheat rotation, because that's what the Green Revolution essentially brought in. Paddy was not a major crop in Haryana till the Green Revolution and till increased irrigation happened. Whereas now it is the dominant Kharif crop. It has, all the other traditional crops of the Kharif season, that is the summer sowing, have more or less been edged out by paddy. And as a result, what are we seeing? We are seeing, firstly, of course, a declining water table. And between 1974 and June 2020, there was an 11-meter drop in the average water table in Haryana. Now, what is more interesting is between 1995 and 2020, there was a 9.5 meter drop. So things were changing gradually, and then suddenly there has been this almost dramatic decline in water tables. And this is something that I think, the state government is seized of, and maybe later when we come back, I'll share some of the initiatives that we are taking up to address all these issues. Right now, I'll just flag some of the concerns, and I guess they might be common to Punjab also. And then, of course, is the issue of groundwater pollution. Along with depletion is pollution because of increased fertilizer use, insecticide use, pesticide use. We're seeing a groundwater that is heavily polluted. There are nitric oxides, all kinds of pollutants. And, I was just, thanks to this webinar, I also looked at some of the data. So in 1970-71, we were using about 14 kgs per hectare of fertilizer use, which is now up to almost 220 kgs per hectare. So again, it's a very dramatic and quantum jump. And we tend to see these as markers of progress, that you're using more fertilizer or more pesticide, whereas it should be the reverse, perhaps. If we look at the earth as our biggest resource, that we should be able to, over time, reduce their use instead of take these as markers of economic progress. That's just my view, but I think it is time now to think along those lines. Also, as mentioned by George, outbreak of all kinds of new variants of old diseases or pests, So the disease that we're seeing on crop is particular to this wheat-rice rotation. And therefore, it is more resistant, leading us back to more chemicals. So it is really a vicious cycle that is being perpetuated year after year. Crop residue management, we all know, particularly as far as the rice straw is concerned, huge environmental pollution impacts, as well as a net nutrient negative impact on the soil itself. And then there is the issue of soil health and land degradation. We're seeing increased alkalinity, salinity, degraded lands, and a generally very poor organic matter in the soil, which was not the case earlier. Please let me know when my time is up. Okay?
Sumita, I'll come back to you because I'll a very interesting conversation.
Areas of concern for us, and maybe we can then discuss strategies later.
Yeah. So I'll come back to you. It's interesting conversation. So let me just quickly go over to Aniruddha now to just get some views from Punjab, and then we'll come back to the discussion. There are a couple of questions that come up. Over to you, Aniruddha. Over to you.
Thanks, Anjal. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you, Guru, my friend from ISB and ISP, for organizing this very topical webinar. And happy Earth Day, everyone. I think what I can only echo what my friend and batchmate Sumita just talked about, the issues that plague Haryana. It's the same, because essentially we are the same geographical zone. You see, if anybody ever had any doubts about whether climate change was happening or not, because we did have some eminent people putting a question mark on this aspect itself till recently, just look at the weather conditions today. I mean, we in Chandigarh are experiencing 27-19. I mean, we all are sitting here. This is unheard of. End of April. This is not the temperature that is supposed to be there when wheat harvesting is in full swing. And actually, as I was going through some of the data that was trickling in the morning about our crop cutting experiments for wheat harvest, we are seeing actually a drop in wheat productivity this year vis-a-vis last year. And the reason for that is very simple. I mean, you see, for the wheat to have a bountiful crop, there are two occasions when you really need some good water supply. I mean, preferably rainfall, but otherwise irrigation. One is sometimes during the close of February, and then sometimes during the middle of March or the third week of March. Now, both these time periods we had dry spells. And the result of that is that it has led to a loss in productivity of wheat. And the second point that was also mentioned, and Arvind was mentioning about it, is it also leads to an issue of quality. And in parts of Punjab, as we are procuring, carrying out the wheat procurement at the minimum support price, the problem that we are also experiencing is shriveled grain. Now, the shriveled grain essentially is because of lack of moisture. And this certainly is enough evidence of climate change. Now, you see, I was looking through again, as Sumita was saying. I mean, one tends to go and look back at some of the key data whenever you are looking at some of these events, like this webinar. And you'll be surprised to know I was informed that we had snowfall in Pathankot sometimes in 2011, and 2019 was a very interesting year for us, because in Ludhiana in December we had the monthly average of maximum temperature, which was the lowest in the last 22 years. But at the same time, we experienced rainfall in the same year, which was much in excess, almost 50% in excess of what Ludhiana experiences. So you have low temperatures, you have high rainfall. Now this is, and then you have extremely dry spells as well. Studies really have indicated that not only is the temperature increasing, but more importantly, the sunshine hours are going down in parts of Punjab. Now, that's again very, very important. And this leads to a loss in productivity. It leads to an issues of quality of grain, and ultimately has an impact on the livelihoods of farmers. And people may not believe it, but Sumita is absolutely right when she said that 70% of our farmers are small and marginal in Punjab and Haryana. I mean, prosperity did come through the green revolution, but then it has been brought about by the hard work of these small and marginal farmers. Of course, what has also happened is that paddy was never the dominant crop of this region. You see, what it has meant is that for the sake of the food security of the nation, this part of the country has pumped out and exported its groundwater. Now, we have actually exported our groundwater to other parts of the state. I mean, people don't, you see, the point is, as a race, human race, we people don't feel obliged. So when the country was growing hungry, everybody was looking at Punjab and Haryana. Today, people say, forget about these states, there are enough who have raised their hands, but then it's fine. I mean, today, I think Arvind has heard me say this quite often, but today there are parts of the country, Madhya Pradesh, for example, for wheat, and Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Bihar, Bengal for rice, who are contributing now. And perhaps it's time for Punjab and Haryana to look differently. But you see, it is.
I'm sorry, I have to just stop you here. Yeah, go ahead.
Give me a minute to conclude my point, Anjal, because I'm sure you've called me to listen to me. See, the point is that the crops of wheat and paddy are also the most climate tough and hardy crops. I mean, they are the ones which are resistant. I mean, you talk to a farmer, if you want to grow pulses, you want to grow oil seeds, they are not resistant to vagaries of climate as a paddy is. So that's also a key issue. Well, since you've interrupted me now, so I'll stop here.
We'll come back. It's a very interesting conversation, both, and I really value Anirudh, yours and Sumita's interjections, because you guys have from the ground and also the things coming up, but there are a lot of questions pouring in. So as moderator, my responsibility is to direct those questions back to you all, because I think we will before participatory. So let me just go over to, there's a question from Amit Kumar, and I'll pass this on to George. There's a question which is asking about genetically modified crops. How is it resistant to the certain diseases and has low health benefits to the human? So do you think this option could be there as solution part of it? George, over to you.
For me, Anjal. Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I just answered. I was checking the Q&A chat, so I thought.
Yeah, you did answer, but I think for the larger public, it's good to just
of course, yeah.
publicly as well.
I mean, about genetically modified organisms, there are two issues. There is, of course, the issue of health and pollution, and there's the issue of productivity, and the element, more socio-political element of who makes these improved varieties and for whom, no? Who do they benefit? So, for example, let's take an example: Roundup Ready corn, right? So, glyphosate-resistant corn, RR. It is a technological improvement that is very interesting on a scientific level and intellectual development. On the other hand, it's a plant that is a crop that is resistant to a high toxic pollutant, which has proven to be inducing cancer in a large part of population. So I think this is a first problem. The other problem is in terms of water pollution and soil pollution and loss of soil biodiversity, and then there's the issue of okay, so it resists glyphosate, but corn traditionally in Mexico, where it's native from, is not grown by itself. It's not in monoculture. It's actually a polyculture. It's called the Three Sisters, no? The milpa system, which includes corn as a main feature, pumpkin and beans, and sometimes also sweet pepper. So this is the thing, like how are we transforming, no, and shifting, going from something that is high knowledge intensive and with very much interactions in terms of biology towards something that is completely technological based, no? In this case, herbicide is technology, and the GM crop itself, to replace the functions that nature already gives us. So, I mean, the call is not necessarily to, it's not that I'm in favor or against particularly, it's just that we need to be critical about these technologies. Who do they serve and what are they for?
Yeah, thanks, Georges. Ken, there is a question for you if you're, if you could put on your video. Okay, I'll come back to you, Ken.
Hello.
Yeah, the question to you is about green agriculture. So this is coming from Gurpreet Singh, and the question is whether green agriculture is increasing productivity. What is your view on this?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the great things about green technology is that it's good for the environment, but it's also often very good for farmers' profits. So I mentioned in my introduction that increasingly in the UK, farmers are using small robots to cultivate the fields rather than using big tractors. That uses less fuel, less diesel. And the fact of using less diesel, of course, means there's fewer emissions, but it also reduces costs overall in the longer term for farmers. Likewise, by targeting your use of fertilizers or your use of pesticides, you're able to use less of both, which is better for the environment, but it also means that the farmer is saving. So, and we recognize that there are obstacles to use of these technologies because often they are new and sometimes they're expensive and so forth. So that's a big part of our cooperation with India, is trying to ensure that we're sharing technologies and making sure that we're building more sustainable agriculture worldwide. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ken. Very interesting. There's a question by Madhu Mishra, and I'll probably request Arvind Padi to answer this question. It's on agroforestry. Could we use agroforestry as a means to mitigate climate change? Arvind, over.
Yes, they can be taken as one of the very prominent pathways to mitigate climate change impacts in agriculture sector. In fact, in the BEUR, the biennial update report, you are an expert on climate change. So the BUR submitted by India to the UNFCCC, in fact, it is one of the pathways which has been mentioned there. So agroforestry, yes, there are many other ways. In fact, the National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture as a part of the NAPCC, that also includes agroforestry as a very major mitigation pathway.
Yeah. Okay. There's another question which is on geotagging. Let me see who wants to answer this. So the question is by Rahul Prakash, and he's asking, could geographical indicated tag, GI tag crop help reduce the GHG emission? For example, Kalamantak rice is a very old and traditional paddy crop, naturally cultivated for thousands of years. Rice cultivation is the highest contribution of GHG emission. I'm not sure who wants to answer. Yes.
Can I?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Anjal. In fact, I come from Odisha, and many traditional land races also are there in Odisha. And in fact, Odisha, the Jaipur tract of Odisha is considered as the secondary origin of rice crop, just for the information of the audience. And I entirely agree that, in fact, you know, Anjal, that agroecological approaches are, in fact, suggested for mitigation options in agriculture sector, but unfortunately the yield of these GI tagged crops that would be very low. So the minimum support price for a GI tagged crop and the high yielding varieties of Haryana or Punjab, they are the same. So we have to find a premium niche market for such produce. But they are definitely good candidates for mitigation options. Thank you.
Thanks. Anirudh, there's a question for you, and there are two questions both for Sumita and Anirudh, but I'll first go to Anirudh. This is a direct question to you, is about deficient water in Punjab and giving the groundwater situation, availability and the free power to the tube wells. The decrease in yield is due to land being, so there has been an impact actually on the groundwater decline with the water availability for people. So what is your view on this one is the question.
Well, no denying the fact that the decrease in productivity is of course due to monocropping, excessive use of fertilizers, and without allowing the soil to regenerate itself is certainly responsible for decreased levels of productivity. And to add to it also is the way that we cultivate paddy. Now the fact that the puddling of technique that we use for paddy cultivation and transplantation itself inhibits the percolation of and recharge of groundwater. So I think one thing that we are doing is we've been focusing a lot on direct seeding of rice technology. And last year we were able to push it to, and actually it was, the COVID situation was some sort of a blessing in disguise for us, because once we realized that the labor, which is generally used for transplantation of paddy, has returned to other parts of the country, the farmer really didn't have much choice. So when we propagated DSR, the direct seeding of rice, it was popular, and we were able to bring in about 20% of our area under DSR. This year we are pretty ambitious. We are targeting 50%. Let's see how much we achieve. So that is one way to conserve groundwater. Of course, there are certain people, soil scientists, who might argue, that it's only good for hard soils and it's not very good for sandy soils. That's fine. I'm sure the farmer is aware of these. And we are also focusing only on those kind of soil varieties. So we are doing something on conservation of groundwater as well.
Thanks. There's another question from Aditya Dar for both of you actually, but I'll first go over to Sumita and then I'll come back to you again, Anirudh. Question is, could you talk about the initiatives taken by both Punjab and Haryana government to conserve groundwater, and can a market-based trading platform in water rights be a solution? Or are there any other alternative that you have on board? So first over to Sumita and then I'll come to Sumita. Over to you.
Actually, our strategy is to go forth with smart With that broad head, we have a number of sub-components or sub-programs that we have initiated on the ground, which means that we have weather smart agriculture, water smart, carbon smart, nutrient smart, and IT smart, knowledge smart. Regarding water conservation, we know that paddy is a water guzzler, and wheat in any case is a crop that is geographically, climatically suitable for this area. So our focus therefore is more on Kharif, that is crop diversification in the Kharif system. And for that, last year, our Chief Minister has announced a scheme specifically for crop diversification, which is called Mera Pani Meri Virasat. So as to encourage people to view water as an asset, as something that is part of their heritage, which they must pass on to the next generation. So it is also putting that mindset. In these schemes, they are giving 7,000 rupees per acre as incentive for crop diversification. And since last year was the first year of this scheme, I'm happy to report that we managed to cover about 80,000 acres with under this scheme diversified cropping, which essentially means that farmers moved away from paddy to other crops and were incentivized. I would stress here that, one very important factor. I don't know if I'm clear. My voice is, I don't know if it's...
Yeah, the slight echo is there, but...
Okay. We must keep in mind the economic signaling that wants to go for the wheat paddy rotation. You have the... As Anirudh said, they are very stable crops. So the farmer knows he will get a certain produce, get a certain price at produce in the market. Unless we put in place a system of alternative economic signals that incentivize other crops equally, if not better, the farmer is not going to diversify. That's common sense. You and I, if we are growing a crop, we wouldn't change unless there was a strong enough economic basis too. So the idea behind this one, in the state has to do with procurement other than wheat and paddy. So last year we did bajra procurement, we did groundnut procurement, we did maize. So that is the price support mechanism we put. These are two big things I would mention.
Thanks, Sumita. Your voice is also breaking, so maybe we'll just fix it in the meantime. I'll request the technical team to just look into it before I go to Anirudh. So Anirudh, very quickly, your side, is there any solution that you see, especially the market-based solution for water rights to fix the environment groundwater issue?
Anjal, you are asking a very, very sensitive question because
this is a question asked by Aditya. So
yeah. I know Aditya. Aditya works. We are working together with Aditya on a lot of issues. So this is some kind of an insider trading. But well, let me share something. We are thinking on those lines, and we have recently set up the Punjab State Groundwater Regulatory and Development Authority, and the State Water Regulatory and Development Authority is looking at a possible scheme where we are trying to, you see, one thing is that out of the 150 odd blocks in Punjab, 127 are almost to the dark zone. So if you want to set up industry, it is very difficult to extract groundwater and set up industry. So what we are trying to see is there a trade-off that we can engage between a diversification of less water guzzling crops and the setting up of an industry? So we are working on that as a concept, but we are also mindful of the fact that it's a politically sensitive topic. We are right in the midst of now in the election year. Difficult for any government to take a decision. But with the Groundwater Regulatory Authority, we are working on that, and hopefully by the end of the year we should be coming to something. But I must also mention here that already we have implemented a Pani Bachao Paisa Kamao scheme where we are charging the farmers, but at the same time we are incentivizing them to consume less groundwater. So I don't think we have enough time to discuss that scheme, but that's something that is already in.
Thanks so much. There are a lot of questions actually, so I request responses will be slightly shorter so that we can cover most of the questions in next 15 minutes. Let me just go over to George's. George's, there's a question on increasing productivity. I mean, one side, this is from that you have in while we have activity to feed the growing population, but at the same time, when you have more and more of agriculture, it contributes to climate change. So this is kind of a dichotomous relationship. How do we solve this riddle? This is from.
Thank you, Angel. That's a really interesting question. So if I rephrase, it's the idea that we need food, but we need food in a way that doesn't harm the environment, and on the other hand, mitigates the harmful effects of big agriculture, right? So yeah, somebody mentioned agroforestry. That's a practice that can be implemented very nicely. I just want to make a point here, the difference between practices, agroecological practices and agroecological principles. These principles of design, which I mentioned briefly, diversity, recycling, synergies, more interactions, and productive efficiency, are design principles that can be implemented anywhere in the world. That they are universal, whether it's in India or the UK or the Caribbean or Africa, the principles remain the same. What's different is the particular practices, and the practices that we implement depend very much on the objective and the possibilities of the people who are implementing them, right? So the idea is that how can we make more eco-friendly farming systems is by understanding the ecosystems that we have around us, by taking advantage of this diversity, whether it's agro-biodiversity, so crops, or wild diversity, in order, for example, to produce biomass and protect the soil, to make mulch and use less water and simultaneously restore organic matter. So this importance of the design, really. And there is a transition now towards agroecological food systems, and I will make a point briefly, is that you have, there's a professor in California, Gleasman, Steve.
I think we have lost Georges in between. So let me just go over quickly to Arvinda. Yeah, Georges, yes. Can you hear me? Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead. We lost you in between. So.
Oh, okay, sorry. So I go back to the levels, this transition towards agroecological food system, just to finish my answer.
Yeah.
The first level 0, let's say, is conventional agriculture, toxic agriculture, which uses pesticides, which is very oversimplified. Then level 1 is the best use of conventional input. So, for example, if we have to use fertilizer or herbicide, don't use it before it rains, so that the salts can remain and be useful for the crops. Level 2 is the process of detoxification or input substitution, also known as organic certification, for example, where we still use monocultures, but we are replacing toxic inputs by non-toxic inputs. The third level, which is the one I'm passionate about, and the something I want to share, is the redesign. How to redesign and rethink these systems. And it can be small scale, but it can also be large scale. And the principles of agroecology are useful for designing this. Last thing is, you have an example, a very useful example in India, which is the zero budget natural farming, ZBNF, that sets examples from farmer innovations that upscale, climate mitigation strategies and resource conservation strategies. Thank you, Anjali.
Thanks. Arvinda, there are 2 questions that just come, and I think that I'll direct them to you. First is by Jeevan Chandra, and is asking about the dryland agriculture, and they are facing severe climate change issues. So what could those issues be, and how do we enhance the sustainability of the system? That's number 1. And the second question is about this question is, okay, let me just go over to this. Okay, first answer this question and I'll locate the second question. This is
okay. Okay, climate resilience in drylands. It's a very good question. In fact, the vagaries of the weather variabilities, they are more pronounced in the dryland areas than in the irrigated tracts of Haryana or Punjab. We heard both the additional chief secretary saying that the cropping intensity is almost 200%, and also the irrigation coverage is more than 95%. So the weather variability is more pronounced in the dryland areas, but there are technologies which could literally be applied there, and specific technologies and practices are available. Georges just mentioned about the natural farming techniques wherever possible. There are many agroecological approaches which are available. I'll just give you a simple example. If somebody is cultivating paddy in an upland, they can very well switch over to sorghum or other millet crops, which will be having less water footprints and also would give better returns to the farmers. So there are technologies available, and we have to contextually kind of take those advisories for the farmers.
The second, yeah, thanks so much. The second question is Medha Mula, and she's asking about the issue of climate smart agriculture. And I know Ikrisat has been doing a lot of work on that one. So would that be a solution to the problem that we're facing? So what would be your views on that?
Yes, I entirely agree that the climate smart agriculture practices and technologies would be very meaningful solutions to the problems encountered. But there are some structural or the policy issues. I would just say that the rationale is not yet appreciated by everyone, more so at the down level of governance. For example, I mean, maybe the top levels of bureaucracy, they might be aware about this, but at the lower level of governance, for example, a sarpanch at the village level, he would not be or she would not be aware, and they would not implement schemes or practice. NREGS is available throughout our country. So if a sarpanch or a panchayati raj representative takes off climate proofing structures in his or her area, that could be a very good practice. Watershed approach is often suggested. There are many other technologies which are available.
Thanks so much. Sumita, you talked about the marginal farmers, and there's a question here about landholding, of small farmers, and could there be a way in which one can pool in the land so that the risk is spread? This is by one of the researchers here was asking this question. Yeah. This is by Srikant. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, land pooling, or if you look at the earlier cooperative movement, that's essentially what it was. And as history or experience has shown us that agricultural cooperative societies have more or less been controlled by one or two people and have been rather a euphemism for the earlier zamindari system or whatever it might have been. But on the other hand, we have a couple of things that we can do and which we are doing. One is that to ensure that the benefits of technology are available to the small and marginal farmers, we have taken up custom hiring centers in a very big way. So where farm mechanization is concerned, we all know that you need a certain size of holding for a particular machine, whether it's a tractor or whatever have you, to be viable and make sense. That's why we have, given very substantial assistance to custom hiring centers. There are more than 5,000 custom hiring centers operational in Haryana, and that's one way of making latest technology available. The other thing is we've been promoting horticulture in a very big way with very, very substantial awareness, training, and subsidies. Now, horticulture, as we know, works best on smaller holdings because it is a more intensive agronomic practice than your regular agriculture. So in fact, horticulture in Haryana has done exceedingly well also. We have leveraged our locational advantage of being around the NCR, whether it is all kinds of vegetables, exotic vegetables, mushrooms, beekeeping. We are taking an integrated farming system approach to promote horticulture and other such crops. So I think these together would help in increasing farmer incomes for small and marginal farmers.
Very interesting point. Yeah, I'll come back to you, Anirudh. I have two questions. Arvind, I'll come back to you. Anirudh, I have two questions for you. One is about Punjab's policy on agro-diversity. What is it do? And second question is about the conservation policies in agriculture. So if there's a dichotomy, if you really want to go for say sustainable agriculture, would it mean that the production will be lesser than what it was before? So how do we compromise on that one? So over to you, Anirudh, and then I'll come to you, Arvinda. You're muted, Anirudh. Yeah. Can you unmute?
Sorry. Thanks, Anjal. I'll take your second question first. And on sustainable agriculture. No, I don't think sustainable agriculture goes against the concept of prosperity. In fact, you see, what we've been now talking about in Punjab is that there was a time when it was about production, productivity, food security of the country. Now, as I said, others have raised their hand. So we are now going to talk about sustainable agriculture and farmers' prosperity. Let's look at ourselves, because plateauing agricultural incomes are certainly not good for the farming community in general. So we are pushing a lot on sustainable agriculture, and that brings me to your first part, which is on agro-diversity. Now, diversification is easier said than done. You know, I've been saying that everybody comes and tells me what to do. I mean, diversify agriculture. The issue is how to do it. You know, the what is a simple part. The how is the difficult one. Now, it took us 2 decades to go through the Green Revolution. There were institutional reforms, there were institutional buildings, and then there was technology and a lot of other things. On diversification here, a lot of people say, let's switch to maize. Somebody says, let's switch to horticulture. What we are doing is now in Punjab is we are looking at diversification as a multi-pronged approach. So we are going to give the farmer an option for maize, for horticulture, for seed production, for allied activities. Now, these are the kind of things that we are looking at. And simultaneously, we are kind of also pushing in for looking at technologies to conserve groundwater. We are working together with Bekrot, which is the Israeli utility on water conservation. They've done some good pilots for us, and we hope to replicate them. So it's not something that will happen overnight, but slowly and surely we are making progress.
Thanks so much. Over to you, Arvind.
Thanks, Anjal. I just wanted to add to what Smita ma'am just told about the land issue. That's a very structural issue and needs a lot of policy focus. In fact, as per the last agri census 5 years ago, the land holding size of any average agriculture household is only 1.08 hectares in our country, which is very small. But then how do we to offset the scale disadvantage, how could we bring the smallholders together? Land leasing is often suggested, and unfortunately, I can take example. I think Anju sir will allow me to take example of Punjab. In Punjab, land leasing is banned, but in Punjab, the land leasing is as high as 30 to 40% by many studies. So in many states, in my state of Odisha also it is banned, but at least the government gives benefits to lessee cultivators or the sharecroppers. So how do we address this? Also will kind of impact the climate and the local agriculture production scenario.
Thanks so much. Yeah, so we almost coming to the fag end of our program.
Anjal, let me just come in for a second. Let me just come in for a second here. Arvind, it's not banned. Land leasing is not banned. There is a convoluted issue behind it. Probably you need another webinar to talk about it, but it's not banned. That's the technical part of it. But perhaps it is more than 40% also.
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, so we are just coming to the fag end of the program. Sorry, there are a lot of questions, but I could not take it in the interest of time. I have to just get into the closing remark from each one of you. I'll start with Sumita, and all of you just remember there's some of questions probably you can just when you're closing you may try to reflect on this one. One question is about the COVID and the responses that we have, and whether COVID issues also very closely related with climate change issues. Just your reflection as you're closing. Second part is about the net zero, issue that we have been discussing. Now this is a new buzzword which has come in the climate sector. So is net zero possible in agriculture is the question. So just reflect upon it, plus your own closing remark, and please limit it to probably 1 minute of your remark. So I'll just go over to Sumita, followed by Anirudh, Georges, and then close with Arvinda. Sumita, over to you.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Well, actually, as it turns out, time has turned out to be very short. But as I mentioned that we are in Haryana going forward to tackle the impacts of climate change on agriculture with a multi-dimensional climate smart agriculture approach, within which we have subcomponents. And I would just like to add that in those subcomponents, we are definitely looking at soil and water health in a very big way. We are taking that forward. Apart from all the other things I've already mentioned, I don't want to repeat: horticulture, integrated approach, awareness generation is a huge part of this. I've already touched upon the economic signaling and price points. And the last thing I'll touch upon is that crop residue management, which also has very big implications, especially for NCR, and it's a global, it's a yearly problem. So, which is also something that we are, there was a point about geotagging. So we are using a three-pronged approach: awareness generation, satellite tracking of each and every farm fire as it occurs in real time, and combining to put technologies for crop residue management. And all that has given us already very good results. The farm fire incidence as far as Haryana goes is down by almost 15% in the last over the last 1.5 years. So as I said, it's a number of things that need to be done simultaneously and not in silos, and that's what we are trying to do.
Thanks, Somita, and very interesting way you're summarizing, and also the the new innovations which is coming out from Haryana is interesting. Let me just go over to George's. George's, your closing remark.
Thank you for having us here, sharing some ideas and sharing experiences. My closing message is to look at farmer innovations as the key to better production and climate mitigation. Farmers have techniques, they have knowledge, and they also have the will and the objective of producing for the environment and better, right? It doesn't make sense that a farmer wants to harm the environment that they're using to produce their own livelihood. So that's my message. Thank you again, and hopefully we see each other at some other point in life.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. It's interesting discussions. I'll go over to Anirudh first. Anirudh, over to you. Your closing observations, remarks, anything way forward.
Thanks, Anjal. And I think I can only echo what George just mentioned and Sumita earlier. I mean, George talked about livelihoods, and yes, you see, when we are talking about climate change and agriculture, we are talking about livelihoods of people. You see, when you talk about reducing emissions from automobiles, they are luxuries that we are talking of for people. I mean, they may be connected to livelihoods, but it's not at the same extent and level as you're talking about in agriculture. So when we are talking about anything related to agriculture, we must remember that it has an impact on millions and millions of livelihoods. The second point that Sumita also mentioned was that we cannot work in silos. I mean, agriculture has to be an integrated approach. I mean, and this is something that we are now working at. And as I mentioned, we are looking at the mantra today for us is sustainable agriculture and farmers' prosperity, because that's the way we are looking at the entire sector. And when I talk about sustainability, it's talking about soil health, it's talking about our groundwater resources, and it's also talking about air pollution. Of course, I mentioned it to the Commission on Air Quality Management for NCR also, that we are responsible only for 45 days of your poor quality, and that in some way. 325 days, 320 days of the year, you yourself are responsible. So please look at it. Don't blame us for everything that happens in those 45 days. So again, Guru, you need to organize a separate webinar on CRM itself. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being on this webinar and learned a lot from colleagues.
Thanks, Anirudh. Thank you. Let me just go to Arvinda. Your closing remark, Arvinda.
Thanks, Anjal. Let me also summarize that the net zero emissions, at least in agriculture sector, is very much possible through effective mitigation measures and appropriate adaptation technologies. I could just suggest in the passing few. We must promote sustainable technologies and practices which have less ecological footprints. Number two, we must go for crop diversification in those landscapes where they are not sustainable. And we must also promote consumer awareness for nutritious food products that will again link to sustainable agri-food production systems. Thanks again, Anjal, for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. I think we had a very enriched discussion today. I'll dare not to summarize anything because we had done a huge in terms of issues and tackling. We diagnosed the problem. We also looked at the solution space, and some two very good interjections came from Haryana and Punjab, especially from the innovations which is happening on ground how do we tackle the issues. Arvinder talked about the issues at the level of India in terms of how, especially dryland agriculture and the sustainability part of it. Georges, thanks so much. You also looked into the issues. Thank you so much. And also shared your experience from the other parts of the global south. And we see a lot of commonalities of the problem that we have been dealing with. And we also looked into the solution space. I think there's a thing that shows, Guru, that this is a hot topic, and then time is short. I couldn't at least half of the question. I just couldn't manage to take it. It was so interesting. So probably we could interact more and then take this forward. Over to you, Guru, to close this. Thank you so much, and thanks everyone for your really interesting interjections and observations, participation. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll just keep it very short. Thank you very much, Anjal, first of all, for moderating this very interesting session. It's never easy when you have such a heavyweight panel, and I think you did a very good job, especially given that you have to balance their views and also balance the audience sort of interest in wanting to ask them questions. I want to thank you for that. I want to thank Shri Anirudh Tiwari. As always, your support to ISB and your partnership is very valued. Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Sumita Mishra, thank you so much for being part of this panel. And you've just stepped into this role, I think a month or two now. We look forward to engaging with you, given that there's a bunch of our faculty who have a deep interest in agriculture space, and we're doing some work with Mr. Tiwari in Punjab. And given that we are here, we'd love to sort of do some work with you as well in Haryana. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Dr. Padi, again, I guess like many people, all of us first get exposed to you on Twitter and then get the benefit of your in-person hospitality. So this is, I'm no exception to that. So thank you so much for your participation this afternoon in this panel and also sharing your insights. Dr. George Felix, thank you so much for joining us from UK. It's always good to have an international perspective, and especially so given that this is an event in partnership with the British Deputy High Commission. And I want to thank Ambassador Ken O'Flaherty for his remarks at the beginning. And also, I'm not sure if he's still on the call, but I like to sort of, just put out a thing out there for him that given that he has the role for, as the regional ambassador for South Asia, we can count on us, and I take the liberty of including everybody here on this panel, on how to achieve some of his goals in the run-up to COP26. It's a common vision that all of us are deeply invested in, and I know that both the states and ICRISAT and everybody else has similar sort of common goals to achieve as well. I want to also mention and thank you to Deputy High Commissioner Carolyn Revett, who's a DHC here in Chandigarh, for her initiative and partnership, and Madhu from the DHC for her help and support in making this possible, and my team members as well. Thank you so much, everyone. To our audience, thank you as always for joining in. When someone like the Additional Chief Secretary says, Guru, you should organize one more of this, I don't take it as a suggestion. I actually take it as an order. So we'll work on it and try and organize more. So we will, and we look forward to your participation in all these things as we go forward. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Thanks.